Okay, that could take the cake for among the more ridiculous things you've ever said.
But you're not throwing snowballs, you're throwing tomatoes.
Those are two completely different statements.
I think it is. That would be ironic.
Have you ever seen anywhere else in the world eggs in the refrigerator?
We're going to make sure that El Greco doesn't get to it because Velázquez might get to it first, and then Picasso painted it.
Equally shocking is the identity of the two other countries.
Well, hello, world. It is time for Smart Drivel. Yes, when you hear that wonderful, harmonious, hello, world, coming from me, Kurt Schneider, you know that it's time for Smart Drivel with me and my co-host,
Jon Ellenthal. And you could even call your strange vocal phenomenon kicking off each episode a bit of a tradition, Kurt, couldn't you?
Oh, look at you, Mr. Transition, right into it. All right, Jon, you know what? Our listeners probably want to get right into it too. So what are we talking about today?
Kurt, we are going to talk about the strange world of traditions and rituals. And when we first started talking about some of the strange traditions, we were looking at traditions that seem strange to us, which is to say, we don't do them, but people elsewhere in the world do them. But as we got into it, we realized that we do plenty of strange things here. So we're going to largely focus on the strange things we do here in the U.S. But do you want to kick us off, get in the strange ritual vibe by pointing out a couple of very strange traditions around the world?
Well, apparently in India, they do penis yoga.
Excuse me?
Yep, you heard me.
Kurt, you know that sometimes people who I work with listen to this podcast?
I'm just saying they do penis yoga gives a whole new definition to hardcore.
What do you wear to that kind of yoga? Is there special clothing like there is for every other kind of exercise?
Actually, there's no Lululemon for this. It's in a tribe in India, and they don't wear clothing at all during the day anyway. And they do penis yoga, I think, to get the genitalia stronger. They pull weights with their genitalia. They do yoga, penis bending, etc. So it's quite interesting.
Well, I'm now doubly glad that we're going to focus on strange traditions in the U.S. so that we can foreclose any other strange traditions like that from around the world.
By the way, it brings another meaning to the phrase up dog.
Okay. Okay. Do you do that kind of yoga on a mat?
I don't know where you do it. So I don't know.
Yoga blocks?
Probably. We shall research more. But that is a weird tradition that I've heard of.
I'm afraid to ask you this question, but are there any Pilates movements that involve the genitalia that we should be aware of?
Well, you know what? There have been pulleys and weights all through the centuries of people trying to... All right, let's move on.
I thought that was mostly for torture. Back to pulleys and weights. There's a tradition in some tribes in Africa where they find an elongated neck of a woman to be quite attractive. So they actually put rings around these women's necks. And as they get older, they add more and more rings, in effect, stretching the neck, which sounds like no fun at all. In fact, everything we've mentioned so far on this podcast episode sounds like no fun at all.
Don't they also, in one of the tribes too, put like saucers in your lip to make your lip really big?
Yeah, I think there's also some tribes that actually put fillings in your teeth to ward off all sorts of spirits. So these things sound really strange to us, particularly your opening salvo. They sound very strange. But let's talk about the things we do here in the U.S. as part of everyday normal life that are completely ridiculous to other people and would elicit the same response that we had to the things you shared, with the possible exception of the first one.
Like what? Give me an example.
I believe we are the only country that practices the strange phenomenon that we call Groundhog Day, where a groundhog comes out of his or her cave and, depending on whether they see their shadow or not, determines whether we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter. Now, knowing which one is which is a little bit like feed a fever, starve a cold. You never know which one is which.
You never get that right. You're right.
It's impossible to remember which is which. But in this case, in preparation for sharing Groundhog Day with you, I have confirmed that if Punxsutawney Pete
Pete.
Pete.
I thought it was Phil.
Punxsutawney Phil?
Yeah.
You know what? I think the phenomenon of our need to alliterate is uniquely American as well.
And that's not even alliterating, because Phil and Punxsutawney are not alliterative.
Punxsutawney and Pete are.
Right. But I think it's Phil.
Okay. Well, before the end of this episode, we will confirm, but I suspect you're right because I'm not sure, and you're speaking with great conviction.
Like always.
If the groundhog sees his shadow, then we are going to have 6 more weeks of winter. Now, there's no way that others can witness this from around the world and conclude anything other than,
My guess is, as we go through these today, if we wanted to really dig deep, the provenance from them probably does go back to Europe or South America or Asia or Africa, because America, except for the Native American traditions, people came from someplace. So I'm sure some other society somewhere did something about more winter.
Well, I think a lot of these things are about warding off bad things from happening or doing things that make it more likely that good things happen. And others are tied to, the natural rhythms of the seasons and things like that.
It's sad, though, John. It's sad because everything is derivative, everything in the world. There's not one original concept or thought ever. Everything is derivative. And I would like to know what the firsts were.
Okay, so you seem rather exercised about this, but will make you feel better that Punxsutawney is really Phil, as you said. I don't know where I got Pete from, but Pete's a great guy, just so you know.
Yeah.
You refer to this stuff as unoriginal or adulterated in some way, but traditions are things that have been passed through the generations. They connect us back to our forefathers. Why are you looking at it as unoriginal as opposed to a modern interpretation of a historical legacy that all humans share?
Look, I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying it's all derivative. It's too bad. I wish we've lost our creativity.
Well, those are two completely different statements. The fact that something is derivative because it's been passed through the generation and reinterpreted over time in using more modern standards, no big whoop. That does not necessarily mean we've lost our creativity. There was a patent examiner who made a statement that, okay, everything that can ever be invented has now been invented. Except I think that quote comes from like the 1800s.
It does. It was like 1880. You're right.
Right. So you sound like that guy. It's a truly ridiculous statement. We have not lost our creativity. Look at mRNA technology, which is one of the positives that has come out of the COVID pandemic. Not that there are really any positives. The fact that they could, from the time they sequenced the genome, they could design a vaccine in a weekend.
Sure.
Indicates there is still profound examples of creativity happening every day, Kurt.
mRNA is derived from RNA and DNA, which is something else. Someone already come up with that derivative.
Okay, that could take the cake for among the more ridiculous things you've ever said.
There have been many more things I've said that are crazy.
Okay, I'm just telling you that our ability to use mRNA in rapid drug design is a demonstration of human creativity. But
John,
once again, we've gotten off topic.
But I want to keep going with this because here's a great example that nature is the creator and we're not. What if, and I'm going to think about this tonight, what if 2 snowflakes were alike?
What then?
Whoa! That means that we're derivative again.
No, it doesn't mean that we're derivative again because 99.99999 of the snowflakes in your scenario there would be unique and original. So the fact that one little thing in your hypothetical is not original, this is like Chaucer. One bad apple spoils the bunch. What's up with that?
By the way, Geoffrey Chaucer, original.
I don't think he went by Jeffrey, but again, that would be the more modern. How do you think it's actually pronounced? Like Joffrey?
Joffrey.
It's one of those Jeffs with a G, like the guy, like the giraffe that was in the Toys R Us commercials.
Yes, you are correct. The movie, The Sure Thing with John Cusack, remember that?
I do.
Well, I was just thinking about it because you said Pete a while ago. You said Pete's a great name. And in it,
I didn't. I said Pete's a great guy. I don't know if it's a great name.
Okay, but they were talking about names for a baby hypothetically, and she wanted like Ethan. And he said, Ethan. Ethan's the kind of guy who eats paste. Now, Nick's your guy. Nick's your pal.
Punxsutawney Nick. We'll see if we can get that change made for next year. Since you're talking about children in that little story you gave us here, I will share a fun fact with you that will be important to you, even though it's completely irrelevant to the topic at hand. Do you know Genghis Khan, who you often reference? Yes. Genghis Khan, who lived, 11, 1200s. He was a prolific fatherer of children.
Strategically, by the way.
Strategically, he must have done yoga, which would have come in handy there.
No, he did it because what he wanted to do was didn't do it for pleasure or just to be a misogynist. He did it because he wanted to create some sort of unanimity, some sort of commonality among all the places that he conquered throughout the world. And if his progeny were part of that, then that would do it.
Today, 1 in every 200 men is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. There are an estimated 16 million men who have come from Genghis Khan.
That's awesome.
So talk to me about the presidential turkey pardon and how the rest of the world probably looks at us and says...
Well, by the way, didn't Ben Franklin want the turkey to be the national symbol instead of the eagle?
Quite possibly. Why did he want that, Kurt?
Well, because I think turkeys roam wild and free in America all over the place.
Why would you pick a bird that doesn't fly?
Well, I think that's an issue. I think that's why it got turned down. That's why they went with the eagle, who soars. Turkey kind of walks.
I think the metaphor and the symbolism of the eagle is a little bit better than the turkey. That being said, Franklin did get a lot of things right. So how do you think Europe and Asia and other parts of the world look at us when we have a presidential turkey pardon as part of our Thanksgiving holiday?
You know what I think? I think they say, gosh, those Americans are really empathetic.
So let me get this straight. We're empathetic because one turkey gets pardoned and millions get slaughtered at the same time. Once again, you're focusing on the single outlier, like in the snowflake example.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So give me an American tradition or ritual that you think would stick out like a sore thumb to the rest of the world.
By the way, 1 is the loneliest number.
I've read that, heard that.
I think it's 3 Dog Night.
That would be ironic if that were true.
I think it is 3 Dog Night. That would be ironic.
Have you ever done yoga to 3 Dog Night's music?
Joy to the world.
All the boys and girls now.
I challenge you to find someone, generation non-specific, who doesn't love that song.
Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. Give me a ritual, please.
Okay. I studied in Spain for a summer, and I was part of this festival called La Tomatina. Tomatina is tomato, makes sense, and it's a tomato festival. And basically, it's like a massive, they close down the streets. It's like a massive snowball fight, but you're not throwing snowballs. You're throwing tomatoes. And you come out covered. You look like you've just gone through some sort of bizarre horror film.
That is an unusual ritual, albeit not an American one, but tell me what the origin of the festival of tomato throwing is.
Well, there's this one time there was this little boy named Phil, and he was walking through El Cid, and El Cid said, we're going to get rid of the Moors and put them out of Spain. And Don Quixote came up with a tomato, and then Franco said, forget about it. We're going to make sure that El Greco doesn't get to it because Velázquez might get to it first, and then Picasso painted it.
And then the architect who's responsible for a lot of the buildings in Barcelona, Gaudi, got involved. And the next thing you know, Pete moved to Pennsylvania to compete with Phil for Groundhog Day honors. So, Kurt, you were in Spain. You've had the benefit of traveling the world because you're very fortunate in that regard. Have you seen another place on Earth besides the U.S. that insists on having ice in its beverages so the beverages can be cold?
No, and as most Americans will tell you when they travel overseas, that's probably the thing that chaps their butts the most.
They're upset because like our drinks cold?
Yes.
They're deeply upset. They're disturbed.
Offended.
They're offended because we don't do it their way, or is there something that suggests that they don't like?
I'll tell you exactly why it is.
Okay.
It actually shows the innate superiority of the American way. And because of if you have ice in your drinks, you know why?
No.
Because we invented the refrigerator and the ice maker and all that, and way before any other countries did. And so it shows that the American way and democracy and everything our founding fathers played for, it's symbolic.
In fact, I don't know if you've ever actually seen some of the Declaration of Independence, some of the edits, things that were taken out. There was actually a clause related to the use of ice cubes in our drinks to demonstrate to the rest of the world the notion of American exceptionalism.
It actually first read, we're allowed the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and ice cubes in our drinks.
Yes. Well, I know in China where they don't use ice cubes, they think it's quite upsetting to the system, the body system. It's disturbing.
They're not wrong.
Chinese medicine urges against the imbibing of cold drinks. So when you were in the hills of Portugal and studying in Spain and other traveling you've done, I asked you about ice in the drinks. Have you ever seen anywhere else in the world eggs in the refrigerator?
Yeah, why do we do that?
We actually have a reason, although it does separate us from the rest of the world. We put our eggs through an extensive cleaning process, and it actually takes away some of the outer layer of the egg. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't refrigerate them, bacteria would get in. But in the rest of the world, they don't go through this probably unnecessary over-the-top washing process, so they don't need to put their eggs in the refrigerator.
They also don't put butter in the refrigerator, and we do.
Why do we put our butter in the refrigerator? Do we like cold butter?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know why? So when we get toast and we take some of the butter and put it on, we like to rip the toast apart as we're trying to spread the butter.
You know what I do? I put the butter on as soon as the toast comes out of the toaster while it's still hot, and then I give it a moment to just sort of get ready for spreading, and I don't have much spreading resistance. I also like my toast dark, so I never have to deal with a flimsy piece of bread. I like it.
I also think that margarine, or oleo as it was called first, is one of the sins against nature and mankind. And whoever did that was trying to be creative, wasn't derivative, huge, massive failure.
Do you know what country on earth receives the most visitors?
That would be, you mean like tourists?
Yeah, like people who don't live there coming there.
Got to be France.
It is indeed France. Let me give you some statistics. Let me first acknowledge your correct answer because I saw the disappointment in your face. That is a correct answer, Kurt. Well done. Bravo.
Merci beaucoup, mon ami.
De nada. Someone did a comparison. This speaks to the American tradition of supersizing everything because our portions are big. They studied the size of a candy bar from the U.S. versus a candy bar in Paris. U.S. candy bar, 41% bigger. They looked at a soda serving size, again, versus Paris. U.S. serving size, 52% bigger. A serving of yogurt, I don't know if that's frozen yogurt. I don't know if they have frozen yogurt in Paris, although in a global economy, I don't see why they wouldn't. The serving size in the U.S., 82% bigger than the size in Paris. So another American phenomenon, supersize me, Kurt.
That gets back to manifest destiny, for sure.
You may have to follow that up with some explanation.
Well, there's a direct line between manifest destiny and supersizing our food in America.
Again, can you tell us more?
Sure. We were fortunate to be a burgeoning country at a time when we had a lot of people in the beginning, especially from Europe coming over and other places where they were packed in and there wasn't a lot of freedom or a lot of land. And all of a sudden we realized we are on a continent that seemingly goes on forever. So instead of Ireland is the size of West Virginia, right? I mean, it's crazy. Other countries are the size of one state. Well, guess what? We have 48 domestic contiguous states, and it just goes on and on and on. So we can think big, dream big, be big, breathe big, and eat big, because we also had so much produce available to us.
Okay. So our land mass as a country, which of course, the last point you made about our ability to produce food is certainly dispositive. But because of our giant landmass, that translates to our portion size. But our portion sizes in Russia, for example, ginormous.
Not as much bounty in Russia.
Right. So it really is the bounty, the economic prosperity, more than it is our sheer landmass. You know,
but manifest destiny is we have to go across this whole land and get it. Now, I'm not saying manifest destiny is a good thing, by the way, but we have to go from sea to shining sea and take everything around in us.
Do you know what the folks who were pursuing the western border of our country in this concept of manifest destiny thought when they got to the Great Lakes?
No.
Well, they thought they had reached the Western Ocean. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Many more miles to go before they slept. Speaking of miles, we're a progressive country, right, Kurt?
Yes, we are.
One of the great things about America, or one of the things that makes it different, is we tend to look forward, whereas many countries tend to look backwards. Given that, is it not shocking that we are one of only 3 countries in the world that still use inches and feet and pounds to measure stuff? Equally shocking is the identity of the 2 other countries that join us in this old world approach to weights and measures. Myanmar and Liberia. Just the 3 of us, inches and feet and pounds. Riddle me that one, Kurt.
So how do you think that attaches to thinking forward?
Well, I think we're using a measurement system that has been largely outdated, obsoleted by the rest of the world. We continue to hang on to an old system despite the fact that almost all of the world has moved on. That seems inconsistent, incompatible with our forward focus, our progress, our conquesting.
That's really interesting. And it's interesting also when you talk to a lot of people whose ancestors came to this country from a different country, and their ancestors, and they know nothing about their ancestors and where they came from, what town they lived in, and what they did. Because when they came here, you're right, they wanted to assimilate, forget the past, everything's forward. And yet we and the former Burma, Myanmar, and Liberia are the only 3 that still use ounces. So what
else do we share with Myanmar and Liberia that only the 3 of us, bosom buddies, triplets, are the only ones on earth that do, or in this case, still do?
I know.
What's
the
that?
Red, white, and blue snow cone.
Ah, very good. When was the last time you had a snow cone, Kurt?
Ooh, I like snow cones. I haven't had one in years. Well, I made my own with my kids, where I take syrup and put it over snow that we first got out of the winter.
You know what? Another thing is that dovetails with our system of weights and measures is how we format the date, Kurt. How unique is America in that regard?
And it screws everyone up when they go overseas and they have to put their birth date on, the passport thing, and they screwed up every time.
So in the rest of the world, it is day, month, year.
Which makes sense sequentially, right?
Yeah, and it does get confusing. And as the world has become a bit of a global village and we interact with people from all over the world, it absolutely does create confusion. Talk to me about the American phenomenon of Black Friday. Now, there are no better shoppers in the world than Americans, and there's nobody out there that commercializes Christmas, which the rest of the world emphasizes the religious syllable, and we tend to emphasize the commercial syllable, not universally, but sort of our thing. Black Friday must be looked at from around the world as something that is both uniquely American and ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. So America was not founded on democracy. It was founded on capitalism. That's been the driver of America since it was founded. And there's no bigger symbol of capitalism than Black Friday. So take a sacred day, Thanksgiving, give it its due, part a turkey, and then let the spending begin.
Easter eggs and jelly beans and Peeps. We do add a commercial component to things that were otherwise religious in origin. And that is American creativity. So you've got your creativity. We didn't just take the old Christmas tradition or Easter tradition from years and years and centuries ago. We added something to it. American creativity. You got what you wanted, Kurt.
But Easter and Christmas and Halloween and...
Oh my God, Halloween.
But these are all derivative from like pagan rituals.
But Halloween is an American thing. Would you please pretend I am from another country and I am experiencing Halloween for the first time? Describe to me what we do and let me know when you think you've gotten insane enough.
Okay. I want you to dress up so I can't recognize you. I then want you to have a sack with you, and I want you to go up to a stranger's house, knock on a door, and threaten them if they do not give you something tasty or some sort of treat, you're going to do something to them.
So, Mom and Dad, don't you tell me that I shouldn't talk to strangers? I shouldn't eat too many pieces of candy? Why does all of that get suspended for one crazy night?
You know what? I think that's a good thing in life. I think we should take what we normally do and suspend it for one day. I think one day a month, we should do something completely against our grade.
I think we do that a lot, but you and I can commit to that and we can report on our progress on upcoming episodes.
So yes, so John, we need to wrap up soon.
Let's wrap up, but you have a little bit of a lightning round. Any ones you want to throw out there before we sign off for today?
I think penis yoga was my nadir and my pinnacle at the same time.
You're going to open and close with that because you know what? Some things once is not enough. I'd like to throw out the American tradition of taking a doggie bag home from restaurants if we didn't finish our dinner, which would be considered a profoundly embarrassing thing in Europe. They don't take leftovers out with them.
Yeah, I know we went to Paris years ago. And actually, we were in Provence, and it was probably 20 years ago.
Did you have herbs?
And yes, we did. And herbs. And the idea of a to-go coffee was anathema to them.
We are well known for drinking coffee on the go, and that is not something that's done elsewhere. It reflects our go-go capitalism because we got to get to work.
Exactly.
We don't take time off from work compared to the rest of the world, certainly Europe. We do not go on vacation, at least compared to places like Europe. So we work hard so that we can buy lots of toys for our kids on Christmas. All right, Kurt.
That's it for today, John. I think this was fun, and maybe I'll come up with some other rituals, or we'll ask our drivelers, do you know any rituals, whether albeit American or they are from afar ashore, that you can post on our Instagram or Twitter or website? And please, again, we're still in our NPR PBS pledge drive. We need listeners. Tell your friends about Smart Drivel.
Yes, please share the love. We would be grateful for that. Nothing would make us happier than sharing a little Smart Drivel more broadly with others. Kurt and I will be back next week with another provocative episode of Smart Drivel. Until then, we hope that your life is filled with Smart Drivel. We will see everybody next week. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Bye.